This happened back when I was a kid. I was pretty young, I think about 7 years old or so. I remember that when I was a kid, I always loved going to Toys R Us. My parents didn't really go there too much, but whenever they did, I was sure to go along. I have a younger sister, and during this time, she would have been about 3 or 4 years old. One time, I went with my mom and sister to the local Toys R Us. I don't remember the exact reason why we were there. I don't think that I was supposed to be getting anything though. Still, I was glad to go with and look at all the toys. It was really the only toy store that I remember going to as a kid. So we got there, and I was walking around following my mom and sister and looking at everything. Most of the time we would go to a store, there would be 1 or 2 aisles of toys, and here it was the entire place. The store really was not that busy. I don't remember exactly what day of the week we went on or what time it was, but I do remember there being not that many other people around. So after following my mom and sister for a while, I found this area of toys that I was really interested in. My mom knew that I liked it, and she was going to go to another part of the store with my sister. I remember she asked me if I wanted to stay in that area or come with her, and obviously I chose to stay, because I think she was going to one of the girl aisles for my sister. She then told me where she would be and said she would come back to get me. Then her and my sister left. I stayed where I was, and nobody else was in the immediate area. After a while though, I wanted to go back to my mom. I don't remember exactly why, but I did. I should have just stayed where I was and waited for her to come back, but I was young, so I remember that I left the area to go and find my mom. I figured that it would be really easy. Unfortunately for me, it was not. I got lost pretty quickly and didn't really know where in the store I was. Then I started to get worried that I would not be able to find my mom at all. After walking around for a short time, this nice woman approached me. I'm not really sure how long she saw me wandering around, but she came up to me and asked if I was okay. She was very friendly, and she asked me if I was looking for my mom, and I told her yes. She told me that she had seen my mom and knew where she was. I don't know why, but I completely believed her. So the woman told me to follow her, and I started walking next to her. We went down a few random aisles. I remember the next thing I knew, we were near the front of the store and the entrance. It appeared as though this woman was just going to walk right out the doors with me. As we got closer, I remember seeing this man just standing by the doors. He was alone, and I remember he looked at me and also looked at the woman. We were walking closer and closer to him. Now, I knew that my mom hadn't left. She definitely would have come and found me before, and certainly wouldn't have gone outside without me. I remember telling the woman that my mom was at the girls' aisle, but the woman just completely ignored me. I had to have told her that like 2 or 3 times in a row. She did not stop walking and did not say anything. So when we got within like 30 feet of the door, I just stopped. I then turned around and just ran in the other direction. The woman did not run after me. I went as far into the store as I could, and as I continued to walk around, I remember finally noticing all the pink from the girls' aisles. So I went over there, and I actually found my mom. I remember that after that, I did not see the woman or the man inside the store, and they must have left. I also did not go far away from my mom for the rest of the time we were there. I'm a female, and this took place one night about 20 years ago. At this time, my daughter was just 5 years old. One night, I left home to do some shopping. I was getting groceries and then was going to get my daughter a birthday present. She would be turning 6 in a few days. She stayed at home with my husband, and I went by myself. So I got to the Toys R Us, and it was sometime at night. I don't remember exactly when. But after going inside, things were very quiet, and I think that they must have been closing soon. I knew one thing that I wanted to get for my daughter, but I was kind of looking around for something else as well. I don't even remember what toys they were. Probably some kind of stuffed animals or something else related to animals. After being there a little while, as I was standing in this one aisle by myself, I looked over and noticed this guy at the end of the aisle. It was a man who was wearing a large black coat and also wearing a hat. He was just kind of standing there and seemingly looking at me. Immediately, it struck me as suspicious. I'm not a paranoid person at all, but this just seemed really odd. I didn't really look at him and pretended not to notice, but I could see out of the corner of my eye him still just kind of standing there. After a little while, I looked over again. A few seconds after looking at him, he walked away. I didn't know what that was all about, so I moved on and was shopping for probably about 15 more minutes. I didn't see the man during this time. I then checked out and left the store. The parking lot was dark and quiet, and I made my way to my vehicle. But it didn't take me long to notice that there was a car parked right next to mine. It was an SUV, I believe a Suburban, and it was dark gray in color. Maybe it was because of the man staring at me in the store, but this also gave me a bad feeling. It seemed to be parked unnecessarily close to my car, especially with so many open spaces around. But I kept walking towards my vehicle. I then heard one of the SUV doors open, and sort of saw it, but it was at the side farthest away from me. I thought about stopping, but I told myself to just keep going and ignore it. However, shortly after this, I noticed a man walk around the SUV, and it was the same guy who I had seen inside. This was enough for me to turn around instantly where I was and walk back towards the store. I went all the way back inside of the Toys R Us. Unfortunately, not long after making it inside, I saw the man enter the store as well. I wasn't really sure what to do. The guy seemed to be following me, and I didn't know why. His car was parked right next to mine for some strange reason as well. I walked into the store and went down a random aisle. When I did, I saw the man walking a ways away, but in my direction. I just started walking through random aisles of the store. The man was not right behind me or anything. Occasionally, I would look back and see him off in the distance. I'm not sure if he was trying to make it seem like he wasn't following me, but I could tell. I decided to call my husband. I took out my cell phone and called our home phone. Thankfully, he was quick to answer. When I told him what was going on, he said he would be on his way. We luckily lived pretty close by, and it was easily under 10 minutes. I continued to walk around the store. To delay time even more, I picked out another random toy for our daughter. Then I went to buy that as well. When I went to check out, I saw the man get in line right behind me. I'm not sure what he was getting, if anything, but when I left the checkout area, I decided to leave the store again. This time, I saw my husband's car was parked right across from mine in the SUV. I also noticed that the man was following me again, and I heard his footsteps approaching from behind. When I started walking outside, the man left the store as well. My husband emerged from his vehicle and also started approaching me. At that time, the man behind me actually changed directions. He went to the left, almost to the next row of parking spaces, but then quickly almost ran to his SUV, got inside of it, and left. After that, we both went home. I'm grateful that my husband was able to help me out. That man was much larger than I was, and I did not carry any pepper spray at the time. After that, I started to, but luckily, nothing like that has happened since. Way back when I was like 17, I think, I worked at a Toys R Us store. This was back when they were pretty popular and not going out of business yet. It was a typical store, and I had gotten the job because my mom's friend was the manager. When I worked there, it was pretty nice. We usually weren't that busy unless it was a weekend, and I mostly just worked as a cashier. But one time when I was working, something really creepy happened. It was early in my shift, and things were pretty quiet. I was the only cashier that was open at the time, and I think we had 2 other people working. I'm not sure exactly where they were, probably in the back organizing things or stocking a shelf. Things would often be very quiet earlier in the day, but then would get busy in the afternoon. On this day, I recall a customer came in the store and started to shop. It was a man, and he quickly went out of my sight, but not long after this, I saw him approaching and I thought he was maybe going to check out. But instead, he came up to me and asked me where the Hot Wheels were. I tried telling him the aisle, but he asked if I could just show him. I didn't really want to leave the check lanes unoccupied, but because not that many people were there, I did. I walked over and showed the man where they were. but when we got there, he started asking me more questions. I answered a few, but I soon told him that I really had to get back to the registers because nobody else was there. Then I walked back. I didn't quite know where my coworkers were, but I let the man know that there should be somebody else he can ask for help. I got back to the registers, and thankfully nobody was waiting or anything. Some time went by, and I noticed just a few people shopping from what parts of the store that I could see. After maybe 10 or 15 minutes, this one woman came up to me. She told me that some guy had been following her around the store. When she described him, I realized that it was the same man that I had talked to. Apparently, he had been closely following her, and when she asked him to leave her alone, he did not. This continued until the woman threatened to call the police, and apparently he finally backed off. She told me that she had just called the police and she wanted to let me know. The woman then waited with me until the police arrived, and in that time, I remember noticing the man quickly walking out of the store. Not long after, the police got there. They spoke with me and the woman, and then they left because the man did. I thought they were going to look around for him. After that, things pretty much went back to normal. Soon, things got busier, and another coworker joined me at the check lanes. I was kept pretty busy until several hours later, before close. When it was nighttime, things got really quiet again. Once more, it went back to me being the only cashier, and the store being very calm. I had some downtime where I was just waiting for people to check out. It was during this time that I noticed the man from earlier entering the store. I could not believe it. I wasn't sure if I should call the police right then and there or what, but instantly the man started walking in my direction. Surprisingly, he came right up to me and then asked me how much longer I had until I was off. I didn't really know what to do. I told the man I was working until close. He then started asking me a few more things, but the next thing I knew, I remember a coworker started to approach. When the man saw her, he just ran away and went farther into the store into a random aisle. I guess she had been there before when he had been stalking the other woman. After seeing him, my coworker started to chase after the guy. I then called the police and reported him for being back in the store. My coworker came back a short time later, asking me if the man had left. He had not, so we assumed that he was hiding someplace inside the store. The police got there quickly, and we told them that we thought the guy was hiding someplace. They looked around and were able to find him within probably 10 minutes. He had in fact been hiding in the store. He ended up getting banned from the Toys R Us. That was by far the craziest thing that ever happened when I worked there. This story takes place way back when I was 8 years old. It was my first time ever going to a Toys R Us store. In the city that I lived with my parents and siblings, there was no Toys R Us. The closest one was probably 40 minutes away. Well, one time, pretty close to my birthday, we went to visit my grandparents who had a house in a different city. They lived not too far away from a Toys R Us store. I remember we were staying at their house for the weekend or something. My grandparents offered to take me to Toys R Us to get me something for my birthday. I was really excited, and it was just me and my grandparents going. When we got there, I walked in the store for the first time, and it was one of the coolest places that I had been to that point. For a kid, it was probably my favorite store that I had ever seen. I walked around with my grandparents, and we got a few things that I wanted. I don't remember everything, but I would say we were inside the store for like maybe 30 minutes. We got my gifts, and my grandparents also got some small things for my siblings as well. Then we left the store. Now, this is when things got strange. After getting back to my grandparents' car, we left. I was sitting in the back seat, and they were in the front. So I was just looking around, and for some reason, I noticed that this car was driving behind us. I was watching it for no particular reason at all. But I happened to notice that this car started driving back with us for basically the entire way. And we had to make quite a few turns. My grandparents were talking to each other, and the radio was also on. I guess they were distracted and just didn't notice. There were kind of a lot of other cars out on the road too, from what I could remember. And the only reason I think I noticed was because I had been watching the car the whole time. It wasn't following super close or anything, but it was definitely following us. I could tell that a man was driving, and he was wearing sunglasses. But beyond that, I couldn't tell many details. I wasn't sure if he knew my grandparents or something. That was pretty unlikely, but as a kid, for some reason, it didn't seem too wild. I did not bother to tell my grandparents, and I'm not really sure why. I guess I was just a shy kid, or I felt it wasn't too big of a deal. I really don't have a great explanation for it looking back. So we finally arrived back to their house. My parents and siblings were already there. When we got back, I remember the car behind us did not pull into the driveway. Instead, it kept going down the street, but pretty slowly. We then parked and all went inside. Not too long after this, I remember being in the living room, which was at the front end of the house. I saw the same car parked just a ways down the road. I didn't think it to be a neighbor for some reason. Well, I saw the man walk out of the car. He started going up my grandparents' driveway. However, he never came up to the front door or anything. He went out of my view, and I wasn't sure as to where he had gone. My dad happened to be sitting nearby, but was not looking out the window. I pointed out the car to him, and we got to talking. I mentioned the guy walking up the driveway, and then my dad went and told my grandparents, who did not know who the car belonged to. I just remember that the police ended up being called, and the man ran away on foot, but I believe he was tracked down. It was crazy. I really don't remember what exactly the guy was doing, or why he followed my grandparents. This happened just a couple of years ago. I remember that I was with my girlfriend and we were driving back home from a concert. It was pretty late at night, and the concert was about 2 hours from where we lived. However, we did not want to spend any money on a hotel and knew that we could make the drive, even if it meant staying up really late. I remember that about halfway back, we stopped in a city to get some gas. It was a city that neither of us had really been to before. After fueling my car, I started to drive back onto the road. We were going to go back onto the highway, but before doing so, we noticed this old Toys R Us. It was a crazy sight to see, because neither of us had been to a Toys R Us or even seen one since we were kids. I'm not sure when most of them went out of business, but I know that there were only a few, if any, left around when this story took place. My girlfriend asked me to pull into the parking lot to see if it was still functioning. I'm a pretty spontaneous person, and I was curious too, so I pulled in. It was hard to tell at first, because obviously with it being late at night, the place would be closed anyways. The parking lot was completely empty, and the store was sort of by itself. There were no other stores connected to it, or in the same parking lot or anything. I ended up driving up to a parking space and stopped. My girlfriend then opened up her door and got out. I followed, and we walked up to the front doors to look inside. When we got to the doors, we noticed that the store was abandoned. It probably hadn't been open in at least a year. We looked around, and we were kind of exploring a little. Obviously, we couldn't go inside or anything. We were going to head back to the car when we noticed this guy standing by it. I really don't know where he had come from. The man turned and faced us, but did not say anything. I didn't get a real good look at him, but could tell that he had a somewhat long beard. Then the man walked right over to our car and tried opening the driver's door, which was locked. I could not believe his nerve with us right there. I yelled at him that was my car. The man did not answer. Instead, he randomly turned and started running towards us. It was one of the creepiest things I've ever seen. My girlfriend and I both took off running. We ended up sprinting around the side of the Toys R Us building. There was a quiet little road which led to the back, and it just connected to another parking lot. The man did not chase us back there. We waited for a few minutes and then returned to look. By now the guy was walking around the parking lot, but a long distance away. My girlfriend and I decided to make a run for it. We thought that we could make it to the car if he decided to chase us again, and he wasn't really looking in our direction, so we both took off running. About halfway into the sprint, the man noticed us. He started to chase after us again. Fortunately, we were able to make it. We got in, locked the doors, and quickly drove away. The man was not able to catch up to us. Then we continued our drive back home. I'm not sure who the guy was or what he was doing. I would guess that he was probably on drugs. I haven't been back to that area since.